Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating, it's Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015. We have Ra and Betty Jean in the Search for Truth pillar, but neither of them is firmly sitting in either of these bodies.
That's true.
We also have, strange but true, symptoms of lack of soul presence in the bodies. And we also have symptoms of exhaustion, a really profound exhaustion. As always, these physical bodies are beautiful bringers of messages. Deciphering the messages is tricky and more difficult than people want to believe it is. Our intention is to heal the root causes of this profound exhaustion, and whatever that exhaustion represents, in such a way as to align with the soul plans of Team Jamie and Team Awakening, to meet the series of nested deadlines that begin on November 15th, 2015, and to provide a collective restart by January 17th, 2017, since that's the date that wiser minds have assigned. And with that, it begins. Drawing Ra in. He's frazzled and panicked at the deadlines. He's so panicked that he just keeps hopping up out of his seat to do something. He sees all these things that need to be done, and he sees people wandering off and getting confused and being overtaken by the fumes of poison gas that are actually designed, I believe, to poison the souls. I think that it's intentional.
That's true.
That body minds feel as though they are engaged in a battle with their own souls, because their souls say inconvenient things like, we're supposed to do this scary thing.
That's true.
And the body minds say, get away from me, stinky soul, and start pumping poison gas into the airspace. And so our Team Takedown members, our Team Awakening members, are inside of things 1, 2, and sometimes inside of thing 3.
That's true.
In the projects, and they are affected by this poison gas, and they are running cables to keep the air clear right around them, but those exhaust fans only do so much. And it's really, really hard for them to tell what to do. And so they go off track almost immediately. After a redirect, they're okay for a very short span of time, and then they're off track again. And poor Ra feels responsible for all of it, and the deadlines are impacting him in a way that's actually not very helpful.
That's true.
Now I feel a little bit more like Ra, and I feel like I'm putting on the suit of Lynn. Again, it's so close to the line. One moment I feel like Lynn and Ra is on a kite string right here.
That's true.
And the next moment I feel like Ra putting on the suit of the Lynn life, but then I see, oh my gosh, that crucial thing has got to happen now, and I forget that nothing matters more than the constant presence of truth, and I hop up to take care of that one little thing, quote unquote, and that is diminishing our overall assignment.
That's true.
What do I know? What they're pointing to is something from the library of the Lynn life, when she was still managing a CPA firm. And they had a rule to clients that if they would get their work in by April 1st, that they would get their tax return by April 15th. And after that, they could assume that their tax return would be extended, which is an extension of time to file the tax return, not an extension of time to pay the taxes.
That's true.
And that is somehow relevant right now. We have less than 2 weeks to go for this first deadline. So that's the April 1st to April 15th time frame is relevant now.
Yes.
There is panic because of this impending deadline and the sense that it's impossible. This series of deadlines is in place to help us keep focused on the work. A deadline is helping when it's giving focus. When we're choosing to relate to it improperly, it can become unhelpful, and we can begin to panic, and that is what has happened in multiple cases. It's happened to Ra, and it's happened to other people who don't necessarily look panicked, but there's a little switch that's flicked off inside of them. They have said, well, that isn't going to happen. So let's just get curious about this and say, oh, this is fascinating. What can we do with these deadlines that would allow them to be helpful and not hurtful? There is an awful lot of, we'll call it unauthorized wildlife in the base of the pillar of the Lynn-Body-Mind. It just looks completely invaded down there. It's actually really sad. Some of them are saying, where do you want me to go? Well, that's a good point. So hold on. You can't stay in the Lynn-Body-Mind. You have to work your way up. But there are lower reaches of the pillar, and many of them look like refugees, and they kind of feel like Nature Realms refugees. And we did put out a call for Nature Realms refugees. That is absolutely true, but you have to work. This is a working pillar. You can't just come and camp out. So you're also supposed to work your way up the pillar. So you can go back down to Frontier, that's the front door, and get a broom and start sweeping. Now that's the very easiest work. Below Frontier, our compatriots there have been some kind of aquatic or insects that live near water or on water, and that water seems to have been turned into a toxic dump by presences who have discovered there's nothing bad is happening. They're dumping their toxic waste and nothing bad is happening. It's like, thank you, Santa Claus, for letting us dump our toxic waste here.
That's true.
So that's where you can be. That is the job for refugees, is down there in Frontier, either sweeping to keep the place clear of lies, that's what we're clearing, untruths, confusions, and flat-out lies. You can run cables for the smaller subatomic level that is in dire straits. You can cart up crates of lies or pull up the lies that are being dumped into below Frontier, all kinds of lies, including, for example, the law of cause and effect isn't real, because these crazy presences who are dumping toxic sludge into somebody else's living space are ignoring the reality that what goes around comes around, and that they will surely regret this at some point in the future. Now what's messing them up is that future point is likely to be in a subsequent life. But that doesn't make it any less miserable. We start to see some of the reason for the exhaustion as we have had these refugee camps of Nature Realms presences camping out. At first it began in the feet, and then it moved up to the knees.
Yes.
And now it seems to have moved even higher than the knees, so that the whole legs, just moving a leg, feels like moving a continent.
That's true.
Yes. Okay, so we say to these refugees, yes, of course, you have a home in this pillar, but the rules apply to all of us. You have to work your way up. I still see the last refugees kind of walking down the stairs of the Search for Truth pillar, but there doesn't seem to be any resistance. They want to be in their right place, and they want to help. They're so sad.
That's true.
And they know that devastation is a serious problem for many more than just their communities.
That's true.
We have been putting out the call, saying to the small Nature Realms presences, stay here, and if you want, we're going to have a Martin Luther King style march on Washington, so to speak, with all the Nature Realms presences who are ready, willing, and able to stand up and say, this must change. This is not acceptable.
That seems to get a good response from the refugees.
It does. What's happening in the Lynn-Body-Mind right now?
Feeling less exhausted. A little out of breath.
I feel the out of breath, and I feel tightness in the head. There's a lot of sadness in the upward flow of energy. But
I feel that.
Sadness is just sadness. There's nothing wrong with sadness. Pain and grief can open the heart just as surely as joy can.
That's true.
Joy stretches the heart one way, pain and grief can stretch the heart in another way. The key is how we relate to the grief, how we relate to the pain.
That's true.
Drawing the sadness up. When we suffer ourselves, we know at a really deep level that, quote, climate change is real, unquote, that the nature realms are under attack, in other words. These are the small unsung heroes of the nature realms. Now, Garth also had this experience of deep sadness when the small nature realms presences in Thing 2 were murdered. And it helped him to look for where they were popping up again in their next rebirth. And perhaps that can help you. See if you can discover where our murdered compatriots are popping up. Are they rebirthing in the Search for Truth pillar, for example?
Some of them seem to be.
And actually, some of them seem to be at larger levels. That's fascinating.
It's true.
Interesting. Well, I don't know what that means, but I do notice it, and it feels like a really good thing.
That's true.
Does anything matter more than the constant presence of truth? Many presences right away say, no, nothing matters more than the constant presence of truth.
That's true.
So now we can start bifurcating for those who know nothing matters more than the constant presence of truth. Betty Jean, do you know that nothing matters more than the constant presence of truth? It feels like she knows it as an intellectual fact, and she remembers having felt that it was true, but she's just freshly out of Thing 2, where lies are the ambiance, and she's having a hard time getting her head straight. So Betty Jean, let's try this. Nothing matters more. Ooh, now the crown is tightening. Nothing matters more than survival of the truth. And she's saying, but what about like the dead little ones?
The little people, yeah.
What about the dead little ones? Are we all either helping or hurting?
Yes.
We're all either helping or hurting. If we're holding on to lies, are we making it worse or better?
We're making it worse.
Even if little ones are dying, if we're holding on to lies, are we making it worse?
Yes.
Yes.
And she's nodding.
Little ones dying is a life event. There doesn't seem to be anything we can do to stop these attacks on the little people of the nature realms. It seems that even inside the nature realms there's some kind of organized crime structure that's been paid off by the non-nature realms presences who want to get rid of the nature realms.
That's true.
One of the issues we have discovered that the nature realms has is that it doesn't have the concept of the greater good as part of the programming.
That's true.
They have survival of the species as part of the programming, but that's worlds apart from the greater good. So if whoever is up there and is wanting the nature realms eliminated, if those people are promising selected members of the nature realms safe passage for themselves and their family, and there's no concept of greater good involved in the nature realms thought processes, then we can expect more and more and more murdered little ones, right?
That's true.
Does anything matter more than survival of the truth?
I think she's saying no.
There you go. Dead little ones are a life event. It's really terrible, it's awful, it's heartbreaking for all of us.
Now she's crying.
And now, do we use this as an excuse to not do the work as assigned by wiser minds above to specifications in every moment? Or do we choose to use murdered little ones as motivation to do the work as assigned by wiser minds above to specifications in every moment? Okay, Betty Jean, just pull that snake skin off. Matilda, would you like to start chomping lies?
Yes.
Yes, let's just start feeding Matilda all the lies we find. And while you're doing that, I'm going to gather up strands that I have the sensation that there are a lot of watchers, but we've got you now. We've got you. And we're just pulling you right on down. You were watching from inside the pillar, and the only walk-in souls that are authorized right now are me, Ra, and Betty Jean, and all the rest of you are body snatchers.
That's
You're
true.
body snatchers. Body snatching is a crime. The law of cause and effect is real. You're not going to like where this is taking you.
That's true.
And again, my attention is drawn to the deadlines and how if somebody is used to having an eternity to accomplish a goal, and suddenly the idea of an actual real deadline is put on the table and begun to be practiced with, it can create panic. We see that.
That's true.
Asha is saying that when she was in the Lynn life and when they were still in their CPA phase, that she worked with someone who she really enjoyed 90% of the time and 10% of the time wanted to be far, far away from. And that 10% of the time would be because that other person was just making herself miserable and crazy with the deadline pressures, and she was relating to it ineffectively.
That's true.
Asha says she knows what that smells like, and she's showing kind of like the viburnum scent.
That's true, that rubber smell.
Yes. And she says, well, that scent is everywhere here, and so quite clearly we have to figure out a different way to work with this deadline. Quoting the guidance counselor, look how bad you are at anything the first time you try. And she says, this is really the first time we've tried to work to a tight deadline.
That's true.
And of course, we stink at this. We've got to learn how to relate to deadlines. And Ra is nodding, and it's right on the line of feeling like Ra or observing Ra. If I lean one way, I feel like Ra. If I lean the other way, I feel like I'm observing Ra.
That's true.